Well, climate scientists have raised concerns that the El Nino weather pattern that's now active in our region could be the strongest on record. And that could lead to hotter, dry conditions across the Asia-Pacific. But what does it mean for people's livelihoods? Amanda McKenzie is the CEO of the Climate Council and joins me now. Amanda, really appreciate your time with us today. Now, firstly, what is the modeling telling us about what to expect from this El Nino event?
Well, the modelling and BOM has come out today on this is showing that it is likely that we will see an El Nino period and that it's likely to be a stronger El Nino. So Australians would be familiar with El Nino brings usually hotter, drier conditions. Every El Nino is different, but that is what we generally see. But of course, it's now operating on a higher baseline because the globe has heated due to climate change, climate pollution, and so that is operating at a higher level.
Is it easy to predict how long an El Nino might persist?
It's challenging, that modelling, to know how long it will last, but the Bureau's the highest level of confidence is the next 3 months. So there will be periodic views as to how it will progress.
So if we look at closer to our region in the Pacific and Southeast Asia, which of the countries will be more impacted by El Nino than others?
Many countries in the world will be affected, particularly in the southern hemisphere. So in our region, similar to the east coast of Australia, you'd be expecting to see hotter conditions, drier conditions throughout the Western Pacific, as well as Southeast Asia, Southern Africa as well. So like in Australia, hotter, drier conditions that has rippling effects through agriculture, as well as people's well-being. Heat in Australia is a silent killer. It actually is one of the most impactive of all the different types of extreme weather events in terms of death and impact on human health. So I think it's something that we definitely need to be concerned about. And as I said, it's riding on a hotter climate. So for instance, Mildura used to experience one 45-degree day every decade. Last summer, they saw 6 days over 45 degrees in Mildura. So if you have an El Nino, you're then adding onto that. So you're rolling the dice, if you like, and you're loading it with climate change to more heat, more dry conditions. Then you load on El Nino, you get more likelihood of hotter, drier, record-breaking conditions.
Should residents, everyone, you and me, be, preparing, I suppose, in one way or the other to avoid the most damaging impacts of what might be coming?
Yeah, well, certainly if you live in a bushfire affected area, I think there'd be some warning signs for you in this. We saw some severe fires in Victoria last year, but hotter, dry conditions ring the warning bells and say we need to be as prepared as possible. And that is the message in general for heat, for fire, for drought. We should be as prepared as possible, but ultimately this is caused by climate pollution. So we have to address the root cause, which is moving away from fossil fuels, burning coal, oil, gas, to renewable energy, or the problem will just get worse and worse.
Of course, agriculture is, one of the most critical industries feeding, all of us. And particularly in Asia, Southeast Asia, rice crops are arguably the most important. How much stress might El Nino and the conditions it brings hit key crops like rice? And then what may farmers be expected to do to mitigate those impacts?
Yes, and well, of course, rice requires a huge amount of water. So it is vulnerable to drier conditions. And it is one of those crops which most of the region is highly dependent upon. So it is one to watch and one that will be very concerning for many of those countries.
And do you see those countries, and even here in Australia, do we see governments sort of like factoring that into their policies at all?
Yes, there is preparedness in different governments, but what we'd argue is that needs to be heightened now. So given climate change needs to be factored into all government decision making across the board, because it is progressing very quickly, it's happening faster than expected. So we need to factor it into our decisions, into our planning, into our preparedness for communities. And largely, we are not as prepared as we need to be for the impacts that will come for communities.
Yes, of course, agriculture is one thing, and then you've got energy is quite the other. Are we expecting perhaps, as we experience warmer conditions, that perhaps the energy supplies will be impacted, demand will go up, supply may struggle to keep up?
Well, one of the big challenges for Australia is that we rely on coal, and most of our coal-fired generators are now very old. So it's like a clapped-out car. They're more likely to go offline. So in summer, when there's a lot of pressure from very hot days, those are the days where you'd be likely to see some coal outages. In Victoria, for instance, we see coal outages about 20% of the time. So it does tell us that there's more urgency in building out renewable energy to replace our coal fleet, both due to climate change, but also to protect us from blackouts and other things to build more reliability and diversity in our grid.
And has it been a blessing, I suppose, that rooftop solar across the world has been growing exponentially, and the costs have gone down, and more people are having those options for renewable energy in their own homes?
Oh, absolutely. Australia now has more than 4 million homes with solar power. It's the biggest, collectively, it's the biggest power station in Australia. And altogether, we have about 45% renewables now in our grid. So we are making the transition. It has happened relatively quickly, but we need to continue to accelerate that, particularly as we have more demand come online for things like data centres.
Yeah, and Amanda, finally, I was wondering, have there been lessons learned from previous El Nino events?
Yeah, there have. As I said, every El Nino event is different, so you can't completely predict what it is. But I think we have gone through numerous Black Summers, Black Saturdays, with many bushfire royal commissions and other things, similarly on floods or other extreme weather events. And not all of that advice has yet been heeded or implemented. So it is important that government now looks at some of that advice on extreme weather in particular, and looks at how we prepare communities, because many of the global agencies have made these sorts of recommendations saying this is going to be potentially a bad one. Make sure you're ready.
Okay, Amanda McKenzie, CEO of the Climate Council, thanks very much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.